Can you see it?
Oh, oh yeah, I like that one. Friday the 13th.
And then there's Alice.
Oh
She cut
yeah,
off
tattooed Alice.
the white rabbit's
Oh,
head.
that's too bad. He's a great guy.
And then
Oh yeah, the creepy crew.
yeah.
See, and this is why we're friends, because I would have all that same shit. But
Oh, we're
okay.
recording.
Well, yeah. I mean, why
Guys.
not? You got a you got a cool bottle. We got to show everybody. I'm pouring it on
You're
you.
dribbling on yourself.
Yeah, that's what happens. All right. So, ready? We'll get started.
All right.
Let's see.
Let's do it.
Three. Let me tuck my. I should probably look serious for this one, but I'm not going to do it because why? I don't have to. All right. Here we go. What's up, party people?
Hello.
I'm like, she acts like we don't do this every episode.
I know.
Terrible.
But
that's okay because
I got stage fright.
But that's okay because our episode is 53 years of chaos. So why wouldn't our intro be chaotic?
53 years of it though, huh?
53 years of chaos. But we're going to take it back old school.
Okay.
We're going to do this one old school style.
Should we like candles?
Because it is a hell. Huh?
I said, should we light candles? You're already ready.
I already did. Yeah, because the dog farted.
Oh.
Okay. So, we have a hell of a story for this week's episode. And why I say old school is because this story has been 53 years in the making.
Damn.
All right, let's jump into that time machine and go back to September 26, 1971. Mr. and Mrs. Vaughn welcomed a healthy baby girl they would name Susan Leah Vaughn.
Okay.
The young couple's maritable bliss would tragically come to an end in 1977 when Harry Vaughn, the family's patriarch, takes his own life. Losing her father at 6 years old would open a wound in young Susie's life that has never healed. Thoughts of ending her misery became a dark comfort to Susan, whose first serious attempt at suicide was in 1984 at the tender age of 13. So, the beginning of your teenage years is crazy. No matter what gender you are, you're trying to figure out. You got hormones that are going on. Your body's changing. You're not quite adolescent. You're not even close to being an adult, but you're starting to kind of develop the mindset of a teenager. You want to rebel. You want to have your own identity.
Right.
And the thought that part of her identity at 13 was that she was so miserable she didn't want to live to 14.
Yeah, that's
rough.
Sad.
Rough.
Yeah.
Rough for Cindy. Another significant event in young Susie's life also happened sometime in 1984. that came with Linda Vaughn, Susie's mother,
Mhm.
marrying a prominent South Carolina Republican businessman by the name of Beverly C. Russell Jr. This founding member of the Christian Coalition under the watchful eye of Reverend Pat Roberts. And I'm telling you, if anybody remembers television before streaming, that's all you saw on Sunday mornings was Jim, what was it? Jim and Tammy Faye Baker. Uh, what is his name? Oral Roberts, Pat Roberts. I mean, the time of the television evangelist.
Right.
So these guys, to devout Christians, devout Catholics, these guys were heroes. And so to have your hero help you create a Christian coalition in your small town was an amazing feat for Mr. Russell. And in Linda's mind was the ideal father figure for her young Susie. Sounds about right. I mean, doesn't sound like a bad guy. Susie's teenage years were marred with self mutilation and sexual relationships with men who were at times 2 or 3 times her age. So these guys, if she was 15, some of them were 25, 35, 45.
Damn.
What kind of okay, I understand the allure of a young girl and an older man, especially if you are desiring that patriarchal presence. We know it sometimes comes in the form of an inappropriate relationship. And I don't care what anybody says, it doesn't matter how willing the younger participant is. If you're under 18 and you're with a 35-year-old person, that person is sick
Right.
and you need to get away from them. Um, it would be a fresh breakup with a married man while Susie was in high school that instigated her second suicide attempt. So
Damn.
she's dating a married guy in high school. He has a crisis of conscience and decides, I need to break it off with this frickin' 16, 17-year-old. Sadly, this was not the first nor the last sexually perversive relations Susie indulged in. But a knight in shining armor seemed to be heading Susan's way, a savior by the name of David Smith. While the couple were dating, Susan became pregnant. How she didn't get pregnant all the other times is baffling. The whole time I was researching this, she had a ton of lovers from like
Right.
14 on. How did she not get pregnant? I think, honestly, here comes this good guy. He's got a job. He's not married. He's not in a relationship. I'm going to nail him down because
Mm.
there's been more than one occasion. I mean, people I even know personally that have wanted to keep a partner so bad that they bring a child into this world. And it's a child sometimes that's not always prepared for or wanted.
Right.
David, doing what he felt was the right thing, marries Susan. And a short time later, in 1991, they welcomed a son they named Michael Daniel Smith. Is this ringing any bells to you?
No.
Good. I hope they don't start ringing until a little bit more into the episode. Finally, Susan's life had meaning and purpose. She was a wife and a mother. It was her American dream. And for a lot of people, that still is the American dream. You marry your partner, you have a family, you have a home, you live happily ever after. It wasn't long before the cracks in Susan's facade began to show. Sir David nor Queen Susie could stay faithful in their marriage.
Mm.
Somehow, in the midst of their chaotic lives, David and Susan discover that they're going to be parents again.
All right.
In 1993, the Smiths welcome a second son. They name Alexander Tyler Smith. What the hell? Oops, sorry. I'll cut
What'd
that
you do?
out. Touch something. What I always do. Messing with shit. Okay, so I'm going to go back. Well, I'll edit that out. In 1993, the Smiths welcome a second son they lovingly name Alexander Tyler Smith. The young parents see the birth of Alex as a sign they needed to work harder in their marriage and put their lives back together. But marital bliss wouldn't last, and before long, David and Susan had separated.
Mm.
The separation would be the catalyst that sets in motion the events of October 24th, 1994. I
Okay.
hope, and I kind of hear in the background some of our listeners going, oh, yes, I know this one. Events that not only changed David and Susan, but would rock our great nation. Just after 9 p.m., a frantic Susan bangs on the door of the first house she'd come to and cries for the homeowner to call 911. When police arrive, Susan tells this harrowing tale of survival. While stopped at a red light, a dark-skinned man in a beanie cap opened her door, yanked her out onto the street, and sped off into the night with her children, still strapped in the back seat in their car seats. It wasn't long until David and several news crews show up, taking the word of a distraught mother. Quote, they were crying for their mama, end quote, she said. Quote, it was terrible because I couldn't get back there to get them, she said. And we hung on every word, every television appearance, every news report. We hung on her tears. Cameras ran as a hysterical Susan fell into the arms of her estranged husband, breaking away from the tragic couple only long enough to show the police sketch of the carjacking kidnapper. So, yeah, this is back when police sketch artists still drew the victim's perception of the perpetrator. And I can't even begin to tell you how many times this was so wrong. This led so many investigations in the worst possible direction. This also happened in Union, South Carolina in the 90s. And in the Bible Belt, there was still a lot of very open racism. So you have a young Caucasian mother who's telling the nation that her car, her Honda, was stolen by a black man and he took her kids. If they had ever found anybody that remotely looked like that generic sketch, that man would have lost his life for just looking like everybody else. Cynthia Barnes, a local reporter from the small South Carolina town, interviews Susan and David, who by now are never seen without a picture of Alex and Michael pinned to their shirts with yellow bows. I was sitting at a red light, and this man, this black guy, jumped in and he had a gun. He stuck it in my side and told me to drive. End quote. Glassy eyed, Susan goes on to say, quote, I asked him why. He told me to shut up or he'd kill me. Okay, party people. And of course, you laugh. Are you scratching your heads in confusion right now? Because Susan tells the police and the homeowner on the night that the kidnapping happened that the assailant pulled her out of her car, threw her on the street, and took off.
Right.
But here, she's telling the local Channel 10, Channel 13, Channel 3 station that he had a gun and he told her to drive. And he told her to shut up or he'd kill her. Hmm. Susan continues her story, this time from a white couch, holding David's hand to the audiences tuned in to Good Morning America television program. Again, anybody who remembers TV before streaming, if you were an elementary school kid, high school kid, or you still lived at home, it's a 95% chance your parents watched Good Morning America because that's how they found out what was going on all over the world, all over the nation. That's how we knew when 9/11 happened. This is how we knew we needed to panic or not panic, be outraged or not outraged. Quote, he ordered me to drive down this dirt road that leads to the local lake and told me to get out, but refused to let her grab her boys. Sheriff Wells put an all points bulletin out for the 1990 Honda Prestige. He reassured the public that this dangerous man had promised not to harm Alex and Michael. So, 3 times, she's told 3 different audiences 3 different stories. And each time, this person says, I'm not going to hurt your kids. But she's gotten a little bit more specific. And we'll find out why. Each morning, as the sun rose, numerous community members came together, forming search parties, filled with the hope of finding these boys, safe and sound. And just like that, the small town of Union, South Carolina, Alex and Michael, David and Susan, had captivated the majority of the United States. Not only was South Carolina looking for these 2 very young children, the world was looking for them. seared into the hearts of every parent who tuned in were false sightings, dead end leads, and the clock ticking away, the hope that these innocent lives will be spared. As the hours stacked up against Alice and Michael, Sheriff Wells begins to discover cracks in Susan's story. The very first oddity that stood out was all the crying that Susan was doing, and yet she produced no tears. Her kids are gone. They're presumed probably dead. And never once did her crying produce actual tears.
The different stories didn't tip him off?
I think they did, and that's why he started looking at her in a different light, because when we first hear from Sheriff Wells, he is very empathetic to the family. He's very empathetic to the fact that this young mother has lost her infant son and her under 2 years old child.
Right.
And they're just gone in the night. Nobody knows where they are. To all of a sudden looking and thinking that with each audience, the audience, the bigger the platform she got to speak on, the more tragic her story became and the more elaborate her story became. While David looked lost and confused, and when you look, you can look this up on YouTube. When you look at him in interviews, he looks like a deer caught in the headlights. His eyes are just, he doesn't know what to do. His kids are
I wonder if
gone.
he
He's
know- I
gnashing
wonder
his
if he
teeth.
notices the stories have changed.
No, never once. We'll find out in a little bit what happened the same time David finds out.
Well,
Susan talked and even joked with the searcher parties. But the moment that the cameras were on, she would get this deadpan stare. And the sketch artist went to Sheriff Wells and was telling him about his conversation with Susan just 48 hours after the boys were abducted, after she reported it. He asked her, "How's your relationship with David?" Because he noticed the very kind of pressured, very strained relationship between the two. And kind of flippantly, she says, "We're separated. I have a boyfriend. And in fact, this is his sweatshirt."
yeah.
So you heard me right, guys. On camera to law enforcement, Susan was giving interviews in another man's sweatshirt. Wow. Product placement at its best. Sheriff Wells listened on as David recalled the magical moments of being a dad, and he'd never seen or felt Susan was anything but an amazing mother. While the sight of those little innocent faces and angelic laughter filled our living rooms, a simple phrase made the hairs on the sheriff's neck stand up. Mark Class, whose daughter Polly was abducted and murdered out of Petaluma, California, arrived in Union with resources with the hope of finding Michael and Alex safe and sound. Mark Class started the Polyclass Foundation. He, as well as Adam Walsh's father, John Walsh, they were very instrumental in the beginning stages of child abductions. They cultivated resources that people didn't even realize they needed. And they created a support system for parents whose kids were abducted and either murdered or abducted and never found. So to have this man get on a plane out of California and take millions of dollars, millions of people with him to look for these two boys was mind
Right.
blowing. And while doing a national interview, blank faced Susan stated, "I think when the sun comes up, they will find my boys. I just hope he didn't lose patience with all of their crying." Who
Hmm.
thinks of this shit? Your kids are gone. I'm not getting in front of a TV camera. You're going to have to pull me away from looking for my kid.
Right.
And yes, thank you for all the resources you bring, but get out of my way because I am going to look until I can't look anymore or until I find something.
Right.
I'm not going to sit there and say, I hope he didn't lose his patience. The search had reached its 9th day with no solid lead. Now, I'm pretty sure most true crime enthusiasts know this. If you watch any kind of reality TV, you do any kind of true crime podcast, anything, you understand that the first 48 hours in any case, especially with a missing person or a murdered person, is the crucial. This is when most of the evidence, most of the witnesses, everything is fresh. But now we're on day 9 and there's no solid leads. And it seemed like the boys had disappeared in thin air. There was no trace of them. Sheriff Wells began to hint around to Susan that her story was starting to not make sense. There were inconsistencies. A nation was brought to its knees when Susan Smith, on the evening of November 2nd, 1994, whispers to Sheriff Howard Wells, quote, "I've done something I am so ashamed of," end quote. Susan Leah Vaughn Smith confessed to the unimaginable. During an affair with a wealthy married businessman, receives a letter from him breaking off their relationship. This is a guy she did interviews about her missing kids in his sweatshirt.
Mm.
And why was he breaking off this affair? Because he was not interested in being a father. He didn't want to be a father to her children. He didn't want to be a father to his own kids if he had them. He was not interested in
Damn.
changing that lifestyle. With the FBI in attendance alongside the Union Police Sheriff Wells, Susan easily stripped herself of her grieving mother costume as she flirtatiously chatted it up with the authorities.
Hmm.
But the devastating truth still remained. After learning that her married lover did not want children, Susan Smith strapped her innocent and trusting boys into their car seats, drove to the boat ramp, and stepped to the side as her Honda rolled into the lake. Susan swore she was going to commit suicide alongside the boys. But she chickened out. Susan's trial was sensationalized with several revelations that were brought to light. The first shocked and infuriated those who knew the family. Remember Susan's Christian Coalition stepfather, Beverly?
Mm-hmm.
He admitted under oath that he and Susan had an ongoing sexual relationship.
Huh.
And it had started when she was 13. So he came into her life.
Okay, that makes sense.
He came into her life at 6. 7 years later, he's raised her as his own child for 7 years. He begins to have a sexual relationship with her. That's grooming at its best. He got her ready for that. And I will guarantee you that every perverse, inappropriate relationship she had stemmed from him. He created this monster.
Yeah.
After claiming it was a botched suicide attempt, evidence was presented that showed Susan had stopped and started the Honda from rolling twice before letting it finally roll and sink into the lake 2 times. So she is in the car. She gets out of the car, puts it in gear, starts to send it down the boat ramp, stops it, gets back over to the car, stops it, stands there for a minute, starts it again, starts rolling down again. She stops it again, steps to the side, and then puts it back in gear and walks away as her children go into the lake. She watched her kids. She watched her car go trunk up down into the water and sink. When the divers found the car, Michael was frozen in the position of his head turned in the direction of the back window.
That's sad.
Her son watched his killer, who was supposed to be his protector. After a short trial, Susan Smith was convicted on 2 counts of first-degree murder and sentenced to 30 years to life, which means Susan became eligible for parole on the 4th of November, 2024.
Huh.
Now, party people, are you asking yourselves if Susan's story ends here? No.
It doesn't, I'm sure.
No. Her story has just begun. But you'll have to join us for the second episode where Lav and I are going to talk about Susan's scandalous prison life. You guys are not going to believe.
I like it.
You are not going to believe what she has been doing for the last 30 years.
Oh, I can't wait. It's going to be great.
In a federal prison.
I mean, I've heard the place is scandalous, so.
Oh, I'll give you one tiny juicy tidbit and then I'm going to sign us off. She ruined, after prison, now she's ruined her ex-husband's life. And he was quoted as saying, "I will do anything and everything I have to keep her behind bars. She is not and will not ever be rehabilitated. She is not rehabilitatable." And he's not wrong. She's ruined the lives of 2 correctional guards. Well, they kind of ruined their own life, but she had a hand in it.
Right.
So
Right.
catch us not this time on the flip side, catch us on the public side of the prison bars when we tell you all about scandalous Susan Smith. Bye.
Bye.